The scores came back wrong. 1,000 students, 9 months of math lessons, and the group that had used the most advanced AI tutor in the experiment, the group that scored highest during every single practice session, performed worse on the final exam than students who had never used AI at all. Not slightly worse, 17% worse. The researchers at Wharton stared at the data, then stared at it again, because it made no sense. The AI had improved everything: speed, accuracy, confidence, and yet, the moment it was removed, the students couldn't think. What if the tool isn't helping us think better? What if it's slowly replacing the part of us that thinks at all? And more importantly, what happens to the generation that grows up never having thought without it? That question is what this video is about. And the answer, when the researchers finally found it, was not what anyone expected.
To understand what happened, you need to go back to November 2022. That was the month ChatGPT launched. 2 months later, 100 million users, the fastest adoption of any technology in human history. By 2024, a joint study from Harvard, Vanderbilt, and the Federal Reserve confirmed that nearly 40% of all American adults between 18 and 64 had used generative AI. Double the adoption rate of the internet at the same stage, double the personal computer. Schools, universities, companies, everyone moved fast. AI tutors, AI writing assistants, AI feedback tools. The logic was simple. Better tools produce better outcomes. They weren't wrong. They just didn't see the other side of the equation. Because while the world was celebrating what AI could do for us, nobody was asking what it was doing to us. And by the time someone thought to ask, the experiment was already running on 1 million children.
The first researchers who raised concerns were largely ignored. MIT sociologist Sherry Turkle had spent 40 years studying how technology changes human behavior. In 2025, she said something uncomfortable. Technology doesn't just do things for us, it does things to us, changing not just what we do, but who we are. Most people nodded politely and moved on. Early studies on AI and education were overwhelmingly positive. Students were performing better, faster, with more confidence. The tools worked. That was the whole story. Until Hamza Bastani and her team at Wharton decided to measure something different. Not performance with AI, performance after AI. What happens to the skill when the tool is gone? They ran the experiment. They didn't like what they found.
Let me tell you exactly what happened, because this number is the one that changes everything. The students who used standard AI assistants during practice, the ones who performed 48% better than everyone else, scored 17% lower on exams when the AI was removed, lower than students who had never used AI at all. The AI hadn't taught them math, it had replaced the process of learning math entirely, and when the replacement was taken away, there was nothing underneath. The researchers called it a paradox. AI can make tasks easier while simultaneously deteriorating the ability to learn the skills needed to solve those tasks. Read that again. Getting better at the task, getting worse at the skill, at the same time.
But here's where the story gets bigger than one study. Because Wharton wasn't measuring a bug in an AI tutor. They were measuring something fundamental about how human beings learn. For 10,000 years, the way humans acquired skills, real, lasting skills, was through struggle, through failure, through frustration, through sitting with a problem long enough that the brain had no choice but to build new pathways to solve it. Neuroscientists call this productive friction. It is not a flaw in the learning process. It is the learning process.
and a team of researchers at the Wharton School made an observation that reframed the entire conversation. They wrote that people born before the mid-1990s may be the last generation to develop what they called cognitive architecture through sustained friction. Reading maps, memorizing phone numbers, navigating boredom without an escape. Not nostalgia, architecture, the structural way the brain was built. And the children growing up today, for whom AI has always existed, are being built on a different foundation. Not better, not worse, different, and irreversibly so. In early 2026, Nobel Prize-winning economist Daron Acemoglu at MIT published research projecting something he called the risk of knowledge collapse. His model was straightforward. If AI consistently absorbs the cognitive work, not just routine tasks, but the act of thinking through problems, the collective human capacity to do that work independently will erode. Not for one person, for society. He was describing a future where humans are surrounded by more information than any civilization in history, and progressively less capable of generating original ideas from it. Students were dividing into two types of dependency. Tool dependency, using AI for information and generation, and cognitive dependency, using AI to replace reasoning itself. The second category was growing faster. Students were no longer asking AI for answers, they were asking AI what to think. One professor, testing students without AI for the first time after a semester of open access, described watching them sit frozen. Not because the problems were harder, because the discomfort of not knowing, the sensation of productive friction, felt unbearable. They had never learned to sit with it.
This is the moment when the scale of what we're describing becomes clear. The Wharton study was about 1,000 students. Acemoglu's research is about a society. But there is a third level that neither paper addresses directly, because both studies focus on people who chose to use AI, adults who remember thinking without it and decided to delegate anyway. The real experiment, the one with no control group, is the generation being born right now. Children for whom there is no before, who will never know the weight of a question that has no instant answer, who will never experience the slow build of understanding something through failure, repetition, and time, who will never be unreachable, who will never be bored without recourse, who will never write a sentence that is only theirs. They will be the most informed generation in human history, and they may never know what it feels like to think. And you, the person watching this, are the last generation that does.
Researchers studying creativity found something parallel in 2024. AI enhances individual output, but it reduces the collective diversity of ideas across society. When everyone draws from the same model, the same responses, the same frameworks, the same trained instincts, original thought becomes rarer, not because people stop thinking, but because they stop thinking differently from each other. And the long-term implications of that, for science, for culture, for the kind of unpredictable creativity that has driven every major human breakthrough, are something no study has fully measured. Because the children at the center of this experiment are still children, the data will take decades. Which brings us back to the classroom, to the teacher staring at the data she didn't expect, to the students who performed better with AI and worse without it, to a number, 17%, that nobody planned for. The question she was left with wasn't about AI, it was about what she had assumed learning was, and whether the students had ever actually been doing it. That question belongs to all of us now, because the issue isn't whether AI is good or bad. The issue is this:
Every generation that lived through a transformation like this had to decide what was worth protecting, not from the technology, but through it.
You grew up before AI, which means you know something the next generation cannot be taught. What it feels like to struggle toward an answer. What it feels like to be wrong and figure it out yourself. What it feels like to have a thought, slow, imperfect, completely yours, that no machine suggested. That knowledge is not nostalgia. It is the one thing the next generation will need most, and can only learn from people who still carry it. The question is whether you know what you're carrying. Welcome to Watershed, the moment everything changes.